Hello everyone! Today I have another book review for you. This time it's Warlords Incorporated, Black Markets, Broken States, and the Rise of the Warlord Entrepreneur, edited by Noah Raford and Andrew Trabulsi in the year 2015. This book is an anthology, a collection of several essays written by different people, and that's something that makes the review a bit difficult. A normal book as one author, and you can say it's good, it's bad, and that's the reasons. With a collection, you always have to look at the articles itself. This one is good, this one is bad, what is the mixture, is there a conclusion at the end, and so on. As we can see here, the book starts with a foreword and explains that the occupation of a warlord entrepreneur has been around a long time. It gives Frederick VI of Hohenzollern and El Chapo as examples for it. And here is something particular about the book explained. The definition used for warlord is a different one to the usual usage. Normally, if you talk about a warlord, you mean someone who has some military capacity, a guy with a pickup turned into a technical and a few guys with AKs or something like that. Not in this book. They use a wider definition and include organized crime, hackers, terrorists, and all these people from the underworld or the grey market. And they introduce them all in this term warlord entrepreneur. It's also explained that there always have been cycles between creation, consolidation, conservation, and fall, where these entrepreneurs become legitimate and fall in again. And it sets basically the first definition of the book. Then we have the introduction. This again stresses that warlords have one leg in the normal, lawful world and in the underworld. And it says that this book wants to inform about the situation and other results and solutions. Let's see how they fare. The essays themselves are separated in three bigger categories: the dark side, shades of gray, and the bright side. The dark side is supposed to be the status as it is, the origins, something like that. Shades of gray, the interactions between the state and the warlords, and the bright side, the solutions, what can be done against the warlords. The first article is of Warlords and Rodeos. It explains that warlords are an alternative to the system. When it fails and accountability disappears, the warlords will rise. Lost legitimacy of a system creates the opportunity for warlords. Situation where lack of accountability leads to failure leads to more warlords. The rodeo part refers to the goat rodeo, complete fiasco, or a situation where success is very, very, very unlikely. It claims that warlords cannot be defeated because too many people are involved if an agenda is set, and the only way to battle organized crime, terrorism, and other threats would be to reduce the number of players who have a voice in the decision making, or make it set gold where everyone has to agree on following that. The article itself is quite simple, but it has a quite good explanation of it, and can be worth a read. The next one is social and economic collapse. It's a bit problematic because it takes a shotgun approach in an alarmist fashion, meaning they list several reasons why society could be in peril. They claim that interconnected societies are in higher danger of collapse, and that problems will be imminent. Altogether, they promise a cyberpunk future where gated communities are islands in a vast ocean of lawlessness. The problem is that that's altogether not really convincing. They, for example, are also mixing economic downturns with disaster scenarios and disaster relief, and they're not really compelling altogether. The next one is innovation, deviation, and development. It basically says that deviant globalization is a form of economic development and points out that illegal business is still business, and it may have profound geopolitical implications and undermine the foundation of mainstream globalization. Because warlords may be able to usurp and replace state functions, like, for example, the Hezbollah in Lebanon. And here we can see a problem because the author uses the authors use a definition of warlord that is actually closer to the everyday use and deviates from the definition set in the foreword. Sadly, this article again lacks a real conclusion and the main theme remains underdeveloped. It presents the black market as a chance for those who are falling through the cracks, but the analysts, it's not really worked out altogether. So, the next is sovereignty, criminal insurgency, and drug cartels. The focus here is on the drug cartels in South America, especially Mexico, how they are today a global problem because they don't only sell their merchandise to America but also to Europe. They operate on other continents and so on. And we have a particular situation that sometimes those criminals who essentially have only financial motivations become accidental insurgents because they take over towns and sometimes complete provinces where the state is no longer in charge. That puts them into a position closer to a revolutionary or a normal definition warlord than to the ordinary criminal. Sad thing is, again, this article falls short. It doesn't really work out the situation. There is not a solution. It doesn't show how is life under those cartels, what can be done about it. That leaves something to desired. Luckily, this next article is a really good one. It's called From Patronage Politics to Predatory States and is about crime and governance in Africa. It shows that warlord enterprises can become indistinguishable from the state, usually in nations that fall under the term kleptocracy. And it points out that many African economics actually only work for the benefit of a few big men or some elites and leave most of the population on the sidelines. As a problem for this development, they identify a patronage and client system as the main reason. They then proceed to give several examples for embezzlement and corruption inside Africa and end with a quite somber tone because there is very little to no hope for change, and it explains the problem quite well and is a rather good article. So, now we get to the next big part, Shades of Grey, and it starts with warlord governance. The article is quite bizarre because at the first half it states that warlords are an alternative form of political organization that can provide social services. That's okay and true, but that's a problem of an anthology. It was already explained in the articles beforehand. Also, here they again follow a more traditional definition of warlord than the one set in the beginning of the book. Sadly, the article changes its main thesis and then claims that most of these services are actually provided by the state or by NGOs and only tolerated by the warlords, which makes it incredibly inconsistent and it's difficult to really fathom what they wanted to say. The next article is again a good one. It's called Fifth Generation Warfare. It starts with a small explanation about military theory. In it, we have several generations of warfare, and at the moment we are in number 4, which is basically determined by irregulars and militias. Fifth generation warfare will be whatever kind of warfare is able to subdue those irregulars. And it's not here yet, but it should become soon. It, the article itself gives two possible ways in the future: skillful intelligence work or atrocious violence to solve the problem. And here it gets really interesting because most other works would focus on the skillful intelligence work, but not this one. And the latter half of the article is about genocide as statecraft. It gives in great details an overview of Stalin's purge, how it was aimed at terminating social networks and institutional memory. It gives an overview about Cambodia, Rwanda, and it's a nasty subject, but it's a good article about it. If you have any desire or any necessity to read up, I recommend this article as a very good one. The next one is also great. It was my reason for buying the book, and I was not disappointed. It's Weaponizing Capitalism, about the Naxals or Naxalites in India. It gives a good overview about their origins, their tactics, the financing, and the revenue streams, and basically leaves nothing desired. In my opinion, it's the best article of the book, and I really, really recommend it to everyone who has an interest in the subject. The next one and last of part 2 is Mexico's criminal organization. It wants to inform about the structure and the life cycle of cartels, but sadly it's a bit short and trivial and gives not all the information you really want. What's interesting is it identifies that removing the boss of a cartel is necessary to destroy it, but the infighting that follows his arrest or killing usually leads to a huge wave of violence, which makes the situation quite problematic. But so far to part 2. Now we have part 3, and that's where the problems start. So far the book was okay, now we get some really bad articles. And the beginning makes the politics of a post-climate change world. This essay is pretentious enough to speak from itself as a volume, and it's completely and utterly open partisan in its support for green social democracy as the only winning game plan. Basically, the premise is set is that climate change will ravage the world and cause society to collapse, and we have to choose between a rule by warlords or by the GSD. Democracy sounds nice, but the authors also demand that liberal and conservative critics of this new order should be neutralized, and they openly demand the use of paramilitary force against the opposition, which gives a very, very bad taste for everyone else. In conclusion, I have to say that's basically a shameless promotion of an eco-dictatorship that's pretty close to the great research we hear about in the last few years, and it has no real connection to warlords whatsoever. They're essentially just a boogeyman. I do not only have to reject this article, I actually have to condemn it. The next one also is quite weird because it claims bring the end of war to the global badlands, and what we have to do to achieve that is basically nothing, because global integration will push the walls aside, and if we just wait for the one world system to appear, everything will be fine. Okay. The next one, the Whiteheads, is again, I have to say, problematic because it stresses the importance of social power and glorifies the action of activists. Whiteheads, in the sense, are private people and NGOs who are a bulwark against the tide of chaos. A prime example here given is George Soros. It's also weird because they changed the definition of warlord again and now include people in legitimate positions of power, and say that those whiteheads are basically the same like the warlords but the good guys. It's not really convincing, and to make things worse, it's also a shameless plug and self-advertisement for the Avast platform that Mr. Paul Hilder was a co-founder of. Again, I cannot recommend this article. The last one is Beyond Survival, and it gives us 4 lessons. It serves as an ending and kind of resume. And the lessons are called Survival, Insight, Perseverance, and Hope. And to be honest, you could take this complete essay and put it in any self-help book. It would work as good as bad as it does here. No connection to the real problem, and kind of pointless. We then can go to the epilogue, where the authors offer to suggestions in concrete, actionable ways forward. They then give 3 possible scenarios for the future: change, the status quo, or a mixture of both, meaning things will change and others not. That's not really deep, because that's the normal state of all things in life. Altogether, I have to say, if we take the articles for themselves without connection, we have a very, very mixed bag. We have bad articles at the end, we have good articles in the middle, and we have usable articles at the beginning. I would not really recommend you to buy the book. It's probably better to look at the library if you can get their copy, or if you can acquire one of the articles for itself. What's a bit frightening for me is if we take all the things inside the book and combine it to one great, call for action. It would read like that: Warlords take power when the state loses legitimacy and fail to care for all people. The black market can provide services, employment, and sustenance for those without options. To defeat the warlords, we have to embrace a global system that uses paramilitary force to neutralize opponents, including genocide. Yeah. I don't know what's your opinion, but I think if your conclusion supports Emperor Palpatine, you should re-examine your opinions. But that's for me. I hope I could help you with this book, and see you next time. Bye.